Good afternoon, I'm Vashon Brown with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. The Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, has their hands full following another reported case of child abuse, this time at the Clifton Boys Home in Westmoreland. In a release sent to our news centre this morning, the CPFSA said it received reports that wards at the institution were subjected to corporal punishment. The statement said the agency has dispatched a team to assist with the operations of the home while the investigations are ongoing. Additionally, a team of clinicians from the agency's psychology unit has been dispatched to provide counselling support to the wards. The matter was also reported to the police. The CPFSA says it awaits the outcome of the police's investigation. Chairman of the Clifton Boys Home, Reverend Hartley Perrin, told our news centre that the member of staff implicated in the physical abuse of the wards at the institution has been suspended. The house mother has also been suspended. Reverend Perrin said the matter was brought to his attention last week. He says the member of staff admitted to beating the wards.
That on 2, but not more than 3 occasions, he has had me to reprimand the boys using a piece of switch because they were disrespectful and not adhering to the rules of the home. So I said, you know that you are in breach there because under no circumstances are you permitted to hit any of them. So I'm going to ask you to leave immediately and not to be seen over here until the matter is fully investigated and we come to some conclusion as to what direction we need to go.
He says a board meeting will be held today to discuss further actions to be taken at the Clifton Boys Home.
So as it is now, there is nobody, no staffer at the home, save and except the members of the CPFSA. They are the ones manning the home at the moment in the temporary situation until we can find somebody else to take over from them until we can get a substantive person or substantive persons in the post.
Now, the Clifton Boys Home was established in 1961 and is a private facility licensed with a capacity of 35 boys aged 7 to 18 years. The Education Ministry says it has severed ties with the Embracing Orphans facility in St. James. Education Minister Favour Williams made the disclosure at Wednesday morning's post-cabinet press briefing. The orphanage is also to vacate the premises, which it leased within 90 days.
Additionally, we have asked OCA, Office of the Children's Advocate, to include in their investigation the extent of the interaction of Mr. Robansky with the children, and if any interaction was of the kind for which Mr. Robansky was suspended.
House Speaker Marisa Dalrymple Philibert is being scrutinized for how she dealt with a motion which was being brought to have Westmoreland Central MP George Wright suspended from the House of Representatives following allegations of assault. Details from O'Shane Masters.
At least one attorney has disagreed with the position taken by Speaker of the House of Representatives, Marisa Dalrymple Philibert, to disallow the opposition to move a motion for Westmoreland Central Member of Parliament George Wright to be suspended from the lower house. Mr. Wright has been asked to contact the police in relation to allegations he was involved in a physical altercation with a woman. Mrs. Dalrymple Philibert yesterday afternoon fended off attempts by opposition MP Anthony Hilton to have Mr. Wright suspended. Attorney Lloyd McFarlane says the Speaker should have allowed the debate.
And when the JLP raises it like that through the Speaker, it looks like a technical way of avoiding having to vote on a debate. The Speaker should not have ruled against the debate. When she said, listen, until there is evidence on which I can grant the motion, she's making a mistake. It is not she who grants the motion. It is the House that votes on the motion after it is debated. She must allow the debate on the motion. And if there is no evidence, then the members will vote as they wish.
He says that the House of Representatives should not allow an individual action to bring the House into disrepute.
Here's the irony of it. The Speaker decided because there was no charge and there was no complainant, she would not go ahead. Now, if there was a charge, the same Speaker would have said, we can't go ahead because it is now on the matter for judicial interpretation. The fact of the matter is, here you have no charges, they've said. They have not identified the person. But Parliament is responsible for the ethics and behavior of all of its members. The matter of ethics does not necessarily involve a criminal offence being committed. It is a breach of the ethics rules that Parliament must look at. Parliament has a right to determine whether or not the conduct of any of its members was such that it brought the institution of Parliament into disrepute and led to disrespect and diminished confidence in our institution.
But for attorney Bert Samuels, he believes the position taken by the House Speaker was fair. He says, as a lawyer, he would not want any measure to be taken against his client without a conviction.
Some persons in certain areas, based on some convention, will resign pending the outcome of their case. And therefore, if they are acquitted, they come back in the House. If they are not, they get outside.
Meanwhile, attorney at law Clyde Williams pointed out that the Parliament, under the Jamaican Constitution, does not have the ability to suspend a member without prior conviction. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Maurice Guy, says the increasing death toll from the COVID-19 virus is a cause for concern. This spike in COVID-19 deaths has prompted Dr. Guy to call for the government to reconsider its stance on the use of ivermectin as a treatment option for the virus. He made the call while speaking in the House of Representatives last evening.
After 3 weekend lockdowns, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton said the number of reported COVID-19 cases are trending down as well as the hospitalization rate. But while those figures are declining, the COVID-19 death toll has been increasing. It's an observation that has caught the attention of opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Maurice Guy. Dr. Guy said this is a cause for concern.
The number of deaths over the 7-day period, if you look at them, Prime Minister, you will see that in the past 7 days we had 51 deaths. In the 7-day period before that, we had 26, and that was basically during the Easter week to the weekend. And some of the deaths were recorded the following week. So we had 26 then, but we had 42 the week before, 37 the week before that, 31 the week before that, 25 and 26 going back. And what we are seeing based on those figures that the deaths are increasing.
He questioned whether the restrictive measures established by the government were effective.
The matter that should be before us is that in a holistic way, are we seeing a proper picture of what is happening? Because if we are seeing that the positivity rate is going down, we are seeing that the RO rate estimated, as was put on your graph, is going down, but the death rate is increasing, then certainly it means that something is off. Something is not right.
Dr. Guy said an assessment is needed to determine the cause of the increased death rate.
Because it is a function of what happens in the hospitals, and despite the fact that we are seeing that the numbers in the hospital are hovering just between the late 300s to just early 400s, when they were in excess of 400, almost 500 some weeks ago, we're still seeing increased death rates. So it is something that the clinicians, the scientists need to advise us and as a country what is happening there.
In the meantime, Dr. Guy made an appeal to the government to revisit its decision regarding the use of ivermectin as a treatment option for COVID-19. The Medical Association of Jamaica last month had called on the Health Ministry to use ivermectin as a COVID-19 treatment option. But the U.S. Food and Drug Administration said people should not use ivermectin to attempt to treat or prevent COVID-19.
We have been seeing from all over the globe that countries who are in a similar position to us, who may have it worse than us, are utilizing this particular drug with some amount of success. So, Prime Minister, we need, back to the point I'm making, to have a relook at ivermectin, right? If we don't, and when we finally do, the cost that is going to cost this country to get it going to be exorbitant, because other countries are buying up. Supply and demand is increasing the prices, and we may yet reach a point, or we may finally reach a point where there's acceptance and we can't get any.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
And Jamaica's COVID-19 death toll is inching closer to the 700 mark. The Ministry of Health is reporting that 10 more persons died from the respiratory illness, increasing the tally to 692. The latest cases comprise 7 persons from Kingston and St. Andrew, 2 in St. Catherine and 1 in Manchester. Their ages range from 16 to 98 years. Another death is being investigated by the ministry. Meanwhile, 130 COVID-19 cases were confirmed yesterday from 689 samples. The number of confirmed cases now stands at 43,054. A local government representative has raised concerns that younger Jamaicans have not been included in the just concluded COVID-19 vaccination blitz. St. Catherine-based councillor Teresa Turner raised the issue at the Municipal Corporation's latest disaster committee meeting. This after the medical health officer for the parish revealed that persons 18 and over were given the green light to be vaccinated.
The 18-year-olds, the 17-year-olds, these are the people who got to party and say them like when the police run them down. So them continue to keep parties. When you look at the canals during the days with those age group, so we need to find a way to get these people under the vaccination blitz.
Meanwhile, Medical Health Officer Dr. Francia Prosper Chen refuted allegations that the Health Ministry is now relaxing the contact tracing of confirmed cases.
Where we have to request a testing bus to assist us with the testing, sometimes every day of the week.
Very good.
Some days we have up to 90, 100 persons for testing. What we are finding happening, persons who have appointments are not turning up.
An estimated 7,000 persons received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine in St. Catherine over the 4-day blitz. And it's now time for a break, but please stay with us. More local stories when we return. Welcome back, and we're now continuing the news. Renewed calls this afternoon for the development of the town of Negril. Business interests say the town, which contributes greatly to tourism, is in a poor condition. Javon Keys reports.
A year of downtime in tourism due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the perfect opportunity for much-needed infrastructure works and development. Though it's quite the spot for tourists, Negril has for years been criticized for needing a facelift, and seemingly it will miss the opportune time.
When you look on the taxes that we generate, as you says, we contribute 29% of the revenue the government earned from tourism. We don't have a market. We have one of the ugliest and shabbiest town. The potential for Negril, without putting on any more rooms, we could easily increase our revenue by 50%.
Hotelier Daniel Grizzle says redevelopment of the Negril Town Centre would be a good start, and the Negril Chamber and other interests would support the cost. He also criticized the structures which lead into the town. He says 39 acres of land had been secured by former Member of Parliament Wickham McNeil to relocate some of these residents.
We have found it. The Chamber has got a civil engineer to do the topography work, come out with the costing. Right? The total cost for putting in, for putting in 150 units, it will be 195 million Jamaican. That will include your sewerage, water, electricity, road, complete serviceable site. We think we can afford it in Negril. When you look on the taxes that we generate.
Mr. Grizzle also says the town's expansion has impacted utilities.
We've been promised to have a modern tertiary plant sewerage, because what we have is a secondary, right? And this is going over 5 years. Again, we have this serious problem of water, right? You are having all this growth, with people coming in, hotels being built, and you haven't got enough water.
Javon Keys, TVJ News.
Advice this afternoon to drivers of Hackney Carriage and other public passenger vehicles on do's and don'ts when transporting passengers. Following claims of sexual harassment against some of its members, the Jamaica Association of Hackney and Contact Carriages is reminding operators their job is a privilege. Giovanni Dennis has more.
It's a privilege to operate a public passenger vehicle. Use it accordingly.
A reminder to drivers of public passenger vehicles. It comes following claims of sexual harassment against Hackney Carriage drivers. Although finding the claims, quote, hard to believe, the president of the Association of Hackney and Contract Carriages is warning drivers.
Do not use it to humiliate people. Do not use it to at least commit atrocities. I'm asking you kindly, when you take our passenger, treat them like your own.
Touching, he admonishes, is strictly prohibited.
Don't assault them, don't touch them, don't call them miss, don't call them darling, don't use those pretty words. It is much easier to you to say, madam. They might not like it either. But please don't use those nice words to passenger.
He also wants drivers, regardless of how tempting it may be, to avoid engaging in small talk with passengers.
There are those who will come in to encourage you in a lofty conversation and taping you at the same time. There are those who will come inside because they have an agenda. Be careful of the truth.
For psychologist Dr. Liakim Samaj, targeted training is needed to combat widespread ignorance.
The interventions in companies when there's a situation that is beyond acceptable, and what we had to do is a series of workshops where literally we work people through the pieces step by step so that they ultimately understand. At the end of it, they sign a document that, listen, it has been brought to my attention. I now understand how these things work.
Discussions about the ills of public transport locally have taken on added interest since news emerged that ride-sharing giant Uber is planning to make its app available in Jamaica. Giovanni Dennis, TVJ News.
Cabinet has approved a concept paper to advance the development of a national higher education policy framework. The announcement was made by Education Minister Favour Williams during a virtual post-cabinet press briefing on Wednesday.
The approval for the higher education concept paper sets in motion the development of a national higher education policy which would streamline Jamaica's higher education sector to work in a cohesive and efficient manner, facilitating the achievements of the outcomes of Vision 2030.
Mrs. Williams added that there have been efforts over the years to establish a modern governance framework for the oversight and the management of higher education in Jamaica. The country has seen an increase in enrollment numbers, which has resulted in the growth in the number of institutions offering higher education and training.
To date, Jamaica has 3 universities, 5 community colleges, 6 teachers' colleges, 2 polytechnic colleges, and 4 workforce training institutions. The development of the policy would provide a direct and transparent channel of communication between higher education institutions and other institutions in terms of skills development to assist in driving the growth of the economy.
And here now is a preview of what's coming up in this evening's Health Report.
In the next edition of the Health Report, we look at the health impact COVID-19 is having on surgeries for children.
COVID has affected all operations in the hospital, all aspects of hospital care. And surgeries, our planned surgeries for children are also affected. We have discovered that over the past year or so, as time went by, the waiting time for surgeries, for planned surgeries, elective surgeries as we call them, has increased significantly.
That's the Health Report this evening in Primetime News. And now for today's Healthy Living tip. Communicate with your child. ask your child's surgeon for as much information as possible. Try to get your child to relax and stress-free and follow all instructions for the operation.
News overseas now, we go to the United States, where Brooklyn Center police officer Kim Potter has been charged with second-degree manslaughter in Sunday's shooting death of 20-year-old Dante Wright. Meanwhile, crowds filled the streets of the Brooklyn Center in Minnesota on Tuesday for a third night of protest. This as the defense team in the Derek Chauvin murder trial nearby has begun presenting its case to clear the police officer in the death of George Floyd.
Hundreds took to the streets for a third night of protest Tuesday over the police killing of Dante Wright. Initially peaceful, by nightfall, the tone of the crowd changed, with protesters throwing water bottles and other objects at officers, and officers firing pepper spray and flash bombs.
Many arrests for riot and other criminal behaviors. We have upwards of 60 arrests for people that will be booked into the Hennepin County Jail for various charges.
Earlier Tuesday, the officer who shot Wright and the police chief both turned in letters of resignation.
I'm hoping that this will help bring some calm to the community, although I think ultimately people want justice.
A charging decision could come Wednesday, the local prosecutor said. Meanwhile, just 10 miles away, the defense team for a former Minneapolis police officer had just begun presenting their case Tuesday. One of their first witnesses, a use of force expert, testifying that Derek Chauvin was justified in kneeling on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
I felt that Officer Chauvin's interactions with Mr. Floyd were following his training, following current practices in policing, and were objectively reasonable.
Time now for sports. With the prospects of a 4-day season looking bleak, CEO of the West Indies Players Association, Woeful says one problem that players could encounter is with match fees for secondary competition. Cricket West Indies CEO Johnny Grave recently suggested that contingency plans for a regional season could see intra-territorial matches, but for Hines, there has to be a revision of the payment structure.
Games that we play and how we negotiate the fees. They are upgraded to first-class games. Those are all things that we have to work through before we can know exactly where we are, and we are having discussions with the rest of the sponsor.
And Hines says his association, along with players, are willing to facilitate as much cricket as possible.
So we are trying our best to make the best out of a bad situation and see how best we could get some games going, and we're trying to get the maximum amount we can get in this scenario, which will then be a sort of a compensation for the shortfall that the guys would have faced and not having access to the 10 first-class games that are always scheduled.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Vashan Brown. Join us at 7 for Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, have a wonderful afternoon.